of the Abels and the work of so many other people are a lasting testament to vision, architecture, function, beauty, and sustainability. And so we have plenty of time for stories and questions later. Please welcome David Abel, and he is the Master of Historic Preservation.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. It's such an honor to be part of this meeting because it was the gift of Lower Swatara Township when they said their yes that allowed us to take your treasure, the Star Barn, bring it to Elizabethtown, and restore it to share with generations to come. So thank you for saying yes and allowing us to be the caretakers, the stewards of the Star Barn Village, all of its buildings, and all we're doing. Because you see, we believe that we're only the caretakers. We don't own anything. We believe God owns everything, and He entrusts it to us to share it with the world. And the mission of Stone Gables Estate is to share 100% of our net profits to aid abandoned children worldwide, to make this world a better place. With that, I'm going to take you on a journey. So the hero of the story is my precious wife, Tierney. So Tierney Foster Abel is the one that God chose to inspire to read the sign that said, "Save the Star Barn." I had driven by it probably 40 years, read the sign that said, "I wish somebody would do something." One day we went by and my wife said, "I think we should save the Star Barn." Me being a dutiful husband immediately replied, "That's impossible. Never going to happen. That thing's so far under debt, people have tried in the past, never going to happen." But my wife, who has a very deep connection with the Holy Spirit, says, "Well, let me try." And so she set out on a journey to reach out to the nonprofit that had been entrusted to it. Finally got a response, came to find out that my fears and concerns were true, that it was upside down debt-wise, over 7 figures to 3 banks, creditors, and a lot of other people, federal government taxes, state taxes. It was impossible. It was a knot you'd never untie. Well, I said, I'll tell you what, the most we can give is what the amount of the land is worth, which was $130,000. And my wife, through the grace of God, worked with all of those people with our attorney, and we got it for the exact figure of $130,000. That's impossible because that was 10 cents on the dollar. Then my wife says to me, "Okay, I did my job. Now the rest is up to you." And so we started the journey of understanding what does it look like to move this iconic Gothic revival treasure and do it right, because we wouldn't do anything halfway. And so we hired our architectural team out of York. We hired the best, we felt, craftsmen to do this, the stonemasons. It took us about a year of planning and development planning and structural planning. We hired a firm out of Chicago that were Timber Framers Guild that were going to do the timber frames. We got this myriad of gifted architectural people to come in to do it and do it right. So we started this journey that took about a year. Then we came to the day we were going to dismantle and take everything down, and the cupola you see here was going to be taken off the building. WGAL was there. We were there. Our friends were there. They were going to remove it live at 5, WGAL News. My friend came up to me at 4 o'clock and said, "Dave, we have a problem. The crane is fully extended. The cupola is stuck like a tooth halfway pulled out. It can't go back in and it can't come out." At 7 o'clock, they're calling for 40-mile-an-hour winds. We have a problem. At 10 of 5, I said, "I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving." So my wife gets in the car, our friends get in the car, we start down the road, and me being a pious man, I said a prayer. I said, "Hey God, your cupola's stuck, needs a little help." I'm being honest with you, that was my pious prayer. And so we get on the bypass, we're going on the bypass, I get a text. "Your cupola cupola's down. I'm like, what? Pull over, call up, in one piece. He said, you're not gonna believe this, Dave. At exactly 5 o'clock, as if on cue, the cupola popped out, WGAL filmed it, moved it over, and sat it down. God's story, number one. If anybody in this room hasn't experienced a miracle, that barn has miracle after miracle after miracle that were impossible that have come to be possible. And so we continue the journey. So we had to mark every board to put it back where it would go, every beam, every exterior stone, and then put it back together. At some point in time, there were over 70 craftsmen in a day working to get this done in a timely fashion. It took us 1 year to build the Star Barn, 2 years to complete the whole project building-wise. That's impossible. So when we ended up moving the Star Barn to the property, I first walked the property because it was hayfield. I said, Lord, where do you want your Star Barn? And then I see the vision, I see where it should go, right at the highest point of the property, exactly where the Star Barn should be. Marked the spot, brought the architects out, set all the barns the way they would originally have been in 1877. The chicken coop, when it was here, was pulled off its foundation, moved to the other side of the barn. That wasn't the original location. So we used original photographs to put it back where it was, put everything back into position. The two buildings that had been destroyed when the highway went through, we had the line drawings of the loafing shed and the spring house. So we did a little bit of creative architectural features with those, but then put those back up. So, getting dark. So anyhow, I'm walking the property, chose the spot. Are you ready for this? The spot I chose is the only spot that when they were digging the foundation, they hit rock. They dug the pond, they did all the other buildings, and I'm like, well, that's not really funny. And then it hit me. So the Star Barn's foundation is built on the rock of Jesus Christ. Why do we say that? Because I had no idea. Colonel John Motter earned his living in the Civil War and made a fortune selling horses and commissary and equipment and mules to the Union Army during the Civil War. After the Civil War, he built 7 farms. One of those farms for his 7 daughters was the Star Barn. The Star Barn had his most prestigious horses, mounts, that he would sell to the generals and the officers of the Union Army. But on the barn, he put a star, a 5-pointed star, as a louver, which is not common because louvers are meant to let air ventilation. They're meant to let the barn be ventilated so the hay would dry. But he put a 5-pointed star as a sign of hope and prosperity for the nation after this great American Civil War. What we come to find out, the 5-pointed star was put on because the 5-pointed star, the hope was in Jesus Christ, because the 5-pointed star represented his 5 wounds, 2 in the hand, 2 in the feet, 1 in the side. But it didn't stop there as we kept understanding how we believe this barn and farm were consecrated to God in 1877. Barns have cupolas. Cupolas have vents for, again, ventilation. But barns and cupolas don't have spires. Every one of these cupolas had a spire. A spire points to God, or a church or a cathedral as the source of all good things. It didn't stop there. On the top of every spire of every building of the Star Barn was a fleur-de-lis. A fleur-de-lis is represents the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we believe, for such a time as this, God preserved this Star Barn for my precious wife and I to come along to save, to preserve, and then to share with the world. We believe people, bus groups from all over the world will come to see the architecture, but it will experience on this property in a unique way Christ at work. That's why we give away the booklets, the pamphlets for free, so that the story can get out there of how this barn had a purpose, had a symbol, and pointed people to Christ. So we built the Star Barn. We also then did 3 of the original buildings. Was the chicken coop, which had been pulled off. We found the old photograph from 1923 that showed us there was an 11-foot tall spire. So it had all birdhouses around it. So we rebuilt it completely using original old wood, put the spire back on, and then we had to get original pictures to understand what did the weather vanes look like. Then in Rhode Island, we had a weather vane man who made them all out of copper, reproduced every original weather vane exactly the way it looked. We know where the modern weather vane is. A person in New Jersey that's an auctioneer owns it, because somebody in the 1980s took all the weather vanes off and sold them. So we had them all replicated. Then we rebuilt the chicken coop. The original coop is still upstairs in it. We used all original wood to replace any rotted wood. We actually pre-built that building in the Amish barn, so we knew what to replace with the right species of wood, beams that were hand-hewn, beams that were sawn. Then we did the hog barn. The hog barn was the barn the cupola was falling down in. If you remember when you drove by on the bypass, about 70% of that wood was good. So we put that back together, and through a man who donated the model to us of the Star Barn, we realized that it had 5 run-ins. We realized what all the original doors looked like, and that barn was used for 5 female pigs, I believe sows, I'm not a farmer, but I believe so, with their piglets. And then they would come outside through these little doors, and all the weights are in there to allow them to have fresh air. So we restored that. The original carriage house, which actually had a wagon repair shop upstairs, totally put back together using probably 90% of the original wood. And the booklet that I have over there for you to take with the blue cover, it has a lot of those historic facts in it. You're welcome to as many of those as you like, and please give them to friends. So we did those 3, so we did the carriage house, we did the chicken coop, and the hog barn, along with the main Star Barn. Those were the 4 buildings. Then we came to find out on the other side of Route 283, there was another farm. That farm had 2 other barns, a hay barn and a corn crib barn that also had stars, like the Star Barn. That farmer said, you know what, David, I'd like this to go with the Star Barn. Whether or not they were part of the original, he didn't know, but they were definitely on his property. They were definitely Star Barns on the other side of 283, so we took them down. One was a hay barn. It's now attached to one side of the Star Barn, and that's all hand-hewn beams, like a log barn, replicated, and then the other one was the corn crib, which is now out back. The loafing shed was a line drawing that the state showed us when they put 283 through, that where they would have their horses and stuff, that they tore that down. And then the limestone spring house would have been a lot smaller, but I used poetic license to make it look like it would have looked, you know, for a high-end farm. And then the other thing we did is, of course, the Star Barn turned into a cattle ranch. It was originally a horse farm, had 25 stalls in the basement, part of the Star Barn. It turned into a cattle barn. So they added a cement block, asphalt roof building in about 1923, 27, something like that, and made it a cattle barn and tore out all the beams, the wooden beams downstairs. We then used poetic license to restore and make a building that's a milk house that would have replicated what we believe John Motter would have done in 1877, using all hand-hewn wood, putting in the same type of cupola, doing everything to make it look like it should have looked back in 1877. How we doing? Am I catching you up with a few things? Good, good. Well, so for us, this iconic treasure, which is on the National Historic Registry, is a precious gift we've been trusted with. We want to use this to share it with the world, to let the world realize the architectural treasures, the farming life, but also to use it to be a message of hope to the world. So for us, it's an honor to have this be part of the Star Barn Village. And again, thank you so much for allowing Lower Swatara Township to allow us to move this. When we started the move of it, my stonemason came up and we found the 58-foot long, 11-foot tall, arched cellar stone that was underneath the forebay, or underneath the tractor area where the wagons would go in for the threshing floors. And my stonemason said, "You're not going to move this, are you?" Oh, I said, "Absolutely." Now, originally when they built that, they would have filled it full of dirt, they would have put the stones in, and then once it was done, they dug all the dirt out. We didn't do that. We built a metal 2-foot wide aluminum arch, and then we built like a cocoon over it, and then we built that tunnel 2 foot at a time every day, moving another 2 feet, and it's there. It has what we consider the original looking doors, based on, because the doors were all gone, what we think it would look like. All the original windows, they're in the Star Barn. We replaced the glass with oak glass. All the original horse tack pieces, they're including the boxes, they're in the Star Barn. So we tried to save as much as possible. We tried to make it as authentic as possible. All the stone facade on the outside is original and where it was. Then we stretched the Star Barn 3.5 feet. That because there's where we put all of our heating, air conditioning, steel structures for support, because we had to have this built, modern construction, to stay standing. So we had to have it engineered with steel, but you'll never see it. You won't see any of the air conditioning. Everything is concealed. So we stretched it 3.5 feet. So when you're down in the first floor and look up, it's all the original beams, the flooring, everything. When you go upstairs, it's all white oak flooring from another barn, because again, we had to stretch it. Then we built the Star Barn and then cocooned it. We put a 10-inch insulation, and we put a new Star Barn wood structure on the exterior, because you had to protect the old from the elements, and you had to insulate it. So when you look at the Star Barn of the property, the exterior is new, the interior is the original, the upstairs. When we moved the cupola weighed 14,500 pounds. When we double built it, with the insulation, with the thermoglass and everything we did, it weighed 26,500 pounds. And at which point then we had to have an engineer do a 100-mile-an-hour wind shear resistance, because it weighed so much more, so we had to put extra beams in the Star Barn to carry a shear wind to make sure it wouldn't twist and have a problem on that roof. Phew, how we doing? Awesome. So let me give you a little bit of our vision of the property. So there's a second material piece you have over there. We came to find out that Abraham Lincoln's funeral train came through the middle of our property at 12:05 in the afternoon on April 22nd, 1865. When we found that out, it was because Tierney had a vision, my precious wife again, and said, honey, I think we need to have a real train. I had a vision on the bed down there. I said, well, no, you mean like a half scale? No, full scale. I said, really? I said, well, immediately as a good husband, I said, that's impossible. Nobody sells a train. And then when we found about the Lincoln funeral train traveling through and the Lincoln funeral car, I think we should have, I'm like, honey, impossible, never gonna happen. I said, if God wants you to have that, he's gonna have to put it all together, because there's no way. Well, God has a sense of humor, and he connected my wife with a man who built the steam engine that was exactly a 440, like travel on our property, number 63 is what it is now. He also built the yellow passenger cars that were in the vision that my wife had of the train with the 3 cars. He also built the only ever built Abraham Lincoln funeral car, because the other one burnt up in 1913 in a prairie fire, and he was looking for a home to donate the car, but the criteria was the train had to travel through the property, and the original bed had to still be there. We not only had the bed, we had the original 1832 stone wall, and the man said, I think I found a home for my funeral car, and I want my engine and car to come to you. Is that impossible? So the next day, my wife says, you know what would go really well with the train? Now remember, she gets these inspirations, and it's my job to pay for it. And she said, I think we should have a covered bridge. I said, no, honey, you went over the top. No. I said, you want me to make a replica? No, an original. I said, sweetheart, nobody sells an original covered bridge. It's not possible. The next day, I go into my building meeting with the Amish. Hold on one second. And my Amish friend said, hey, Dave, are you interested in a covered bridge? There's one on the internet down in Rocks for $1. I said, you gotta be kidding me. So lo and behold, the Hermill covered bridge, double Burrard span bridge, was available on the internet for $1. So she had the $1, no problem. And she said, The rest is up to you. So we had to go meet with the state and the historic this, and they weren't gonna let us do it. And the state turned us down. They said, you have to restore it on the property right there. And the owner of the covered bridge said, but it's falling into the creek, and they wouldn't budge. So we left the meeting, and I was gonna let it go. The Lord said, nope, go back. It's like, get another meeting. I said, I just wanna be clear that you're denying this man the ability to allow us to move the bridge, to restore and save it. So when that bridge goes down into that creek and hits your brand new PennDOT bridge and causes that damage, you're responsible, not him. The next day they said, oh, by the way, we approved you to move that bridge. You can come do that and restore it. And so we restored the covered bridge. Now, what's the future plans? So again, what I share with you is what's put in our heart. Whether or not it happens, it's up to God. We don't lust after anything. We don't need any of this. We don't need a project. So we've done all we've done, but what's been put on our hearts? We just should have the approvals done for the next phase, which is replacing the barn along Route 230 with the barn that burned down with a limestone barn. We're putting up the one tobacco barn that's Barnes at Belmont. We're extending the track, putting in a switch that adds another little over a half a mile, so it'll end. Nobody does this. Building wooden trestles that the train will travel on the property to make it 1860s period correct. Those things should all be done within the next 12 to 16 months. Next year in July, just found out the final plan should be approved for phase 2, which is Barnes and Belmont. But again, depends on the economy, depends on where this country's at. The Barnes and Belmont are the ones we took down 7 years ago in Lancaster. That barn, so the Star Barn is 26,000 square feet, the barn. The Barnes and Belmont with the two barns together are 84,000 square feet, 4 stories, 17-foot tall. First story is completely underground. It's 33 feet deep till you start building up. The Barnes of Belmont, through the grace of God, if it happens, it will then become the future home of the National Christmas Center, which is a whole nother God story, because I said no to that 3 times. I don't need a project. I'm not going to do it. Anyhow, so the Barnes of Belmont, which we've had in storage for 7 years, protected in a cocoon, God willing, we do that. It's actually only about a 1-year build. We're going to use a lot of modern construction with that because it's not as historically important as the Star Barn was. But that will be rebuilt with all the woods and everything else. It'll be 4 stories, house 40,000 square feet of the National Christmas Center, and then have 2 more floors that could seat up to 750 people per floor dining at the same time. Yeah, one of those floors will have, we believe, working with Sight and Sound, we believe we'll have a small dinner theater, to the grace of God, that you can go and see different shows and have dinner. That's our vision. So that's Barnes of Belmont. The track, the Lincoln Funeral Train track, the track and the train, our ultimate goal, it's a 4-phase plan, is the year after next year, the following year, we're adding an 1860s gallows turntable, and that will give us the ability to flip the engine around, bring it up a siding, and go the opposite direction with the train. The year after that, we're going to put up the other half of the per mill covered bridge, which is 100 feet long, and the train will actually go through the covered bridge. So you can't go anywhere to have that kind of experience. And then we bought the junkyard and got rid of that, and that will end up becoming the train depot, the train station, where bus groups and cars will park, and that'll be its own business on that 5-acre plot. And then the train will be a total of about 3 miles. It'll be about a 1-hour experience, and it'll be second to none in the country. So that's pretty exciting for us. So Barnes and Belmont, National Christmas Center, the Lincoln, the train. Then we'll see how God takes everything from there. But hopefully, the Star Barn had a manor house. The manor house was for the workers, not for Mr. Motter. They lived in a house down the road. The stone one has his name on it. So our goal, we have it all designed and ready, and it's all set for on the property by the Star Barn, is to rebuild the original design of the Star Barn Manor House That'll be a 16-bedroom bed and breakfast with a 120-seat restaurant. With limestone, with the cupolas, it's unbelievable. So that is on our to-do list after Barnes and Belmont. And then after Barnes and Belmont, and after the Star Bar Manor House, through the grace of God, we're going to then do the Manor House. It's still on the Fruitville Pike where the Barnes and Belmont was, French style. That would be an 18-bedroom bed and breakfast with a 140-seat restaurant. Whether or not any of that all happens, I don't know. These are the visions put in our hearts for the next 7 years. And through the grace of God, if He supplies the funds, we'll move forward. Speaking of funds, people ask questions. Where did donations go? Back when it was the previous owner. All those donations were used to keep the Star Bar painted, fixed. There was zero money. How much public money or state money was used by my wife and I to restore the Star Bar? Zero. Not $1 of public funds, not $1 of state funds. We could have requested them. We could have asked for restoration funds and we would have gotten them. We decided no. This needs to be precious. It needs to be God-honoring. And so we don't want the public, we don't want the state, we don't want anybody having to pay for this. This all has to be done through what God has provided to us to be able to do to save and preserve the Star Bar. So I know that's a big question everybody has. I'm going to take a pause and ask you, do you have any questions? Please, yes, dear.
I think we should